Kids have been singing the school bus blues for a long time, for as long as we've used those yellow behemoths. Some things, they never change. Where else do we see gaps between what is acceptable and what isn't? Let's fix those gaps. That's our topic on this episode of the Educators Among Us podcast.
Welcome to the Educators Among Us podcast, where we share motivational messages and inspiring stories for and about educators. Your host, Scott Barron, is author of the critically acclaimed book, Love 'Em and Lead 'Em, and provides powerful insights and wisdom for those who heed the call to teach, coach, lead, and serve at all levels of education.
This is Scott Barron, and I'm honored to be your host for the Educators Among Us podcast. We love to speak words of encouragement, perspective, and even a hope for those who serve at all levels of education. You make a difference in a lot of people's lives, and it's important that we stay energized, we stay engaged, we bring that talent that we've been blessed with, and we use that to build those relationships, to encourage other people, to inspire them to become their best, and to help them learn and to grow, and that takes a lot. It takes a lot of energy out of us, and it requires us to have a focus, an intensity, a preparation that is unusual. It's a level of responsibility that cannot be taken lightly because of the power of our words, the power of our influence, the power of our lessons, the power of our work. We change lives. And so we're thankful that you're there, that you're making a difference in your community, in your sphere of influence. And hopefully this provides some guidance as well as a boost for you as you're going through your day, your week, your month, your year, your life, right? And so thank you. Thank you very much for your service. Part of what we get to travel around the country, working with schools and providing, insights, strategic planning, enrollment strategies, and other things. And Tammy and I, as we're traveling around and our team, we love to listen to jazz music. So sometimes we'll kind of find a spot where there's somebody playing, and we love to go. Maybe sometimes it's a restaurant or another venue, and kind of just enjoy the talent that's there. There's different types of jazz music, including the blues, right? And that's a music that expresses deep emotions. It's connected to different a history of being able to express. Sometimes it's that feeling of being alone, of being out of place, of being in pain, sometimes of being in abuse, but it's still finding a hope and a joy anyway, right? It's a claiming of grace sometimes. And so the blues, they're a fact of life. It's something that we all have to endure, but it's hard, right? I don't know if you've ever heard of it or not, but have you ever heard of the school bus blues? Yeah, the school bus blues. That's one of our granddaughters was around over the holiday, and she was expressing the school bus blues. You see, she had endured some sadness from riding on the bus to school. She had heard some words and some perspectives that were well beyond her age and outside of a respectful, appropriate boundaries, right? It reminded me of my own experiences from 50 plus years ago, of some pretty miserable times on the school bus. It was interesting to kind of have all those sort of feelings come back up and it's interesting talking to other people. There were other folks in the room where we were, and they also said, "Oh yeah, I remember that. That was an awful time for me." And so it kind of struck me. And so I thought, that might be an interesting conversation to have with the educators that are part of the Educators Among Us and school growth. And that is, there's some things that we allow sometimes in our schools and other things that maybe we need to think more intentionally about that, right? Now, Lawrence J. Peter once said, "Everyone is in awe of the lion tamer. In a cage with half a dozen lions, well, that is everyone but a school bus driver," right? And it's, of course, the comparison there is that bus driver has a hard job. I mean, they're driving, they're conveying kids to school, to home, to events, and and many of us have traveled on that big yellow tank typically. Now, sometimes their activity buses can be different colors, but those school bus drivers, we have a couple of bus drivers even in our family, and they, it's a hard job because they have to deal with all these things happening, and it's well, we've all done it. Part of the educational experience is this particular experience is remembered not very fondly. I mean, it was especially towards the back of the bus, right? Because towards the back, that's the perfect place for unruly behavior and even bullying, right? Despite the best efforts of the bus driver who's trying to navigate the road and deal with those crazy drivers who are blowing through the stop signs and everything else, right? And they're trying to keep everybody safe and look in the mirror and multitask. And it's a really, really hard job. But there's very difficult to try to keep order. Most parents have a difficult time just in their back seat, just like 3 or 4 feet away, much less 40, 50 feet away in the back of a bus, right? That's the risk. The school bus is a risky place, as is the cafeteria, as is the bathroom, as is the locker room. We know that there are these places, right? Henry Cloud said, "You cannot fix people who will not take feedback, because from their perspective, they don't have a problem." Right? And that's some of the things that we bump into as we have the privilege of supporting and coaching and praying for and encouraging those who lead in all levels of schools. Is sometimes we have to step back and take the feedback. Is listen, because the narrative that we've been telling ourselves for so long, it's got some gaps in it. It's got some things that we still got to work on. I mean, I like to say this is a school. It's not heaven. We haven't been perfected. We've got room to grow. We've got room to learn. And of course, this idea of the school bus blues, this isn't news, but we've known for years. We've known for years that these areas of the school experience, there's zones where poor behavior often happens. And we can excuse that with, well, that's just the way we've always done it. Boys will be boys, or that one, right? You have two. And yet these areas still retain their dark influence. They still pose a risk to students. Why is that? Why do we have students today in areas that we've known for a long time were risky, and we still allow those risks to persist, right? Our intentionality in seeking and fixing the experience gaps reflects the nature of our collective soul as educators, the collective soul of the school and of the system, right? It reveals the degree to which we will tolerate less than, right? Less than what we know is ideal, less than what we want, less than what we've promised, right? Because people suffer. That's the reality of our work, is that people suffer, really physically, emotionally, spiritually suffer when we refuse to get uncomfortable with what's wrong. Right? Now, Proverbs 28:13 says, "Whoever conceals their sins does not prosper, but the one who confesses and renounces them finds mercy." Listen, it's inevitable that we're going to have areas that are not up to par. They're not up to where we want. But if we kind of give the hand, if we block, if we refuse to listen, if we run around with our ears covered up singing la 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 la, we're causing others to have to sing the blues, right? In an unfortunate way. You see, the best version of us is found only after unmasking mediocrity disguised as excellence. The best version of us is found only after unmasking mediocrity disguised as excellence. We have to stop pretending, right? What are we not talking about that we should be talking about? That's a powerful question that every school leader, every department head, every athletic director, every fine arts director, every library, every person, every business officer, every development officer, every admissions, everybody, every superintendent, right, has to ask, what are we not talking about that we should be talking about? What's causing our people to sing the blues? Do our people feel safe? Do the adults in the building feel safe to identify failure? A place where we've dropped the ball and without being negatively labeled as a troublemaker or as just someone who isn't kind of getting with the system, right? Do we have a commonly used process for owning and undeniably fixing these issues? Right? Listen, schools are ripe for conflict. They are the best. You got all the best ingredients in a school to have conflict. But when we allow these gaps to linger, they have a lingering negative impact, right? When we're no longer willing to settle for less than being our best, our students no longer have to sing the school bus blues and remember those painful times. So get uncomfortable. Get uncomfortable with those gaps this week, my friend. Honestly confronting and fixing the gaps together. We can do this. We can change the music. We can create an environment where it's never perfect, but we're at least growing. We're learning. We're finding better ways to move forward. We can protect our people. We can provide a safety. We can allow ourselves to be a healthy, learning organization. And that's the challenge for us as we move into this new year. 2026 is a fresh start. You know, we get to reinvent ourselves. We get to reinvent our schools. We get to create a better path forward. How beautiful is that? Right? That's a hope. And the good news is we can't fix the past. The past, you know, it's the past, but we can plan, we can improve, we can grow forward. We can find better ways. Personally, in our own lives, we can develop new habits. We can change our narrative, the narrative that's in our heads, as well as what's being shared throughout our team, in our rooms, in our offices, in our classrooms, in our buildings, right? We can change the narrative. That's the hope. That's the hope of the gospel in the Bible is, you know, God's constantly saying, I don't care where you've been. I care where you're going, right? That's a hope. And hopefully that's something that you've been able to remember as you had a chance to celebrate over this holiday season. And you've been able to see, hey, I can reinvent myself. We can reinvent our team. We can reinvent our school. We can find a better way forward. And that's what leaders do. That's what intelligent educators, they figure out how to close those experience gaps. So a coaching question as you're going through this new year and even today, right, is, did I do my best to fix the experience gaps today? Did I do my best to fix the experience gaps today? Love them and lead them, my friend. This is Scott.
Thank you for joining us for the Educators Among Us podcast and for your courageous commitment to this noble calling. We get you and the challenges of this work. To stay connected with this community, be sure to subscribe to our podcast and weekly encouragement at educatorsamongus.com.